Hello, everyone, again. I'm Juliana Fagiardini, and welcome to another Suricata free webinar. Today, we have using JQ for Suricata log parsing with Corey Thomas, who's here with me. As usual, this is brought to you by OISF and Suricata. And OISF stands for Open Information Security Foundation, which is a US 501c3 nonprofit organization that ensures that Suricata remains world-class. It is dedicated to preserving the integrity of open source security technologies and the communities that keep them thriving. Our team and our community includes world-class security and nonprofit experts, programmers, and industry leaders dedicated to open source security technologies. Funding for Suricata comes from donations from world-class security organizations committed to our mission. A list of these organizations is available on our consortium members page. If you work for an organization that uses Suricata but is not a member of the consortiums yet, do reach out to us. Maybe we can find something that works for everyone and benefits all of us. Suricata is far more than just an intrusion detection or prevention system. It does generate IDS alerts and blocks certain traffics based on rules, but it will also generate data from protocol transactions, network flows. It can record Pcaps even conditionally, and it can extract files that it sees. All of that information, or most of them, goes to eve logs, and this is what we will explore today with JQ. If you want to be closer to our community, we encourage you to join our Discord server, and if you have suggestions, resources to share, or questions, to join us on our forum, forum.suricata.io. We will have a Q&A session where you can post questions. Corey, do you prefer that that I ask you right away or to leave to the end of the webinar?
Right away is fine.
All right, so I'll try to do that. Stay tuned in our YouTube channel where we publish all of our webinars. And we are trying to have monthly webinars. So if you follow us on our forum, Discord, or Twitter for now, you should know when there's something new. Corey, our speaker from today, or for today, is a member of Suricata since 2021. He is our QA automation engineer. He has worked for a long while with GM, also HP, mostly with reliability, security, and automation. And now, without further ado, the floor is yours, Corey. Let us have a great webinar.
All right. All right, you see it?
Yep, all good.
All right, so we're going to go over using JQ for parsing our Suricata default logs. Like Juliana said, I'm Corey. I've been doing the QA automation for our hardware lab in OISF for about 2-3 years now. Just trying to find ways to consistently reproduce problems and performance changes so we can, find bugs and things like that. Been in IT for probably over a dozen years now, open source and professional world, and just trying to make everything safer one bug at a time. Like she also just touched on, Suricata is, more than just an IDS, and a lot of the stuff that it outputs is what we're going to be going over with parsing it with JQ here. So yeah, we're going to go over the basics of just JQ and our default output for eve.json. Some use cases, gathering event counts, making documents from data, a little bit trickier substitutions, and then an example of, say, splitting the default eve.json into multiple files, and maybe a couple lectures here at the end. So eve.json, if you are familiar with the output, is just a JSON file, and it has multiple event types. So Suricata's metadata that it outputs will be, for HTTP or flow, DNS, things like that. A lot of the fields will share same thing, like a timestamp here. Everything should have a timestamp, and then maybe several different event types will have a destination IP, flow ID, a status length, things like that. The first thing you would probably want to do is, since this all is by default in one file, you can use JQ to parse all of the JSON. So you could do a -C here and just select .alert. So anything that has an alert value, like this event type here, will get outputted. The -C just kind of makes it all one big chunk, so you don't have the pretty format, which you'll see in a minute here. That's nice, but there is a lot going on here, so maybe you want to narrow it down. So this is an example of a condition. So you can put in different conditions and it will feed back the events that match only that condition. The select was an example of that. And then you can extend it. So this is for a TLS type. And you can say, I want to match on the subject equals, say, another field. So the issuer here, you can easily see these two lines right next to each other look like they're pretty much the same. But you don't have to do just one field to another. You can also do kind of like the event type here. You put in your own string. You can say maybe the TLS version. You want to get anything that's TLS1, and as you can see, the version down here is V1. And then you can see on your network if anything, maybe you have a strict policy that says, this version's outdated. We don't want to see this on the network. Well, why is this here? And this happens to be the same event, just the first one from the last example, but there's plenty more after this. It's just what fits on the screen here. You can also do multiple conditions. So this is for the flow event type, right? You could say, I want the state to be established. I want the age to be above, say, 1800, which is in seconds. And I want, a specific protocol, in this case, SMB. You can see down here, the age is well over 1800. The state's established, SMB protocol. And then you have your, your flow tuples here and your flow ID, which is in several different event types, so you can cross-reference. You can also do the same thing, and timestamp is a string. You could do a greater than on the string. So if you know something's past a certain date, you can, weed out, okay, I know something happened on the network after this time period. But since it's a string, it'll take a bit of a hit on performance just because of the nature of how, that data format works. But you can also do other things with strings. So if you don't want it to just completely equal a string like we've been doing, you could do a select on alert here. These are the same command, but one has a pipe to another JQ instance, which can be handy. Or you can just put it all in the same JQ query here. So you can say alert and alert signature with this pipe operand contains HTTP. And you can see in the zoomed in version here, HTTP is at the end, and all of these alerts are of a signature that has HTTP in the signature name. You can also do a starts with or an ends with signature, which is very handy if say you're looking for all these ET policies or some other rule that the signatures are probably going to all start with a certain thing. It's an easy way to do it, and it kind of cuts down on the cost of CPU time trying to find contains in the entire string. You can actually get a single field. So before we had, the whole chunk of data per event, which you may want, or you may just want, say, the signature in this case. So you can see here, you put the pretty much the same thing, and then another pipe operator at the end, and the actual field that you want to weed out. And right here, you can see all of these different lines. Everything is just a signature and not the whole chunk of JSON, which can be really handy. You can even use that type of logic to say count. So you end up piping out to other tools like sort and unique here. But this first example in the background, you can get, say, an SMB type, and you can grab basically just a status access denied, and then pipe that, get the flow ID, sort that, count that with unique, and then you have all of these flows. You can see how many times access was denied. Once or twice, okay. Maybe it was a mistake. 10 times, maybe somebody forgot the password or trying something fishy. You can also do a grep on just a event type out of the eve.json, get the event type itself, and count how many you have, right? So this ends up sorting it in reverse. So you have the highest, which is flow, since everything on your network will probably be a flow of some type, right? DNS is pretty high. That should be common. Alerts may or may not be high, depending on what traffic you're looking at, what alerts you have loaded, things like that. That's kind of a good idea to get what's going on in your network. Another accounting you can do is our new drop reason. So if you're using Suricata in IPS mode, the drop type will have a reason attached to it. And if you sort those out, you end up getting, app layer error, okay, flow drop, which can be various things, or your rules directly, which are, something you said IPS drop and then say a certain domain or IP or something like that. You can also take in multiple fields. So we've been doing single, but you can just separate it out with a comma here. So select on, say, an alert. You want the alert signature to contain HTTP, and then you actually want the alert signature and the flow bytes that went, say, to the client, for example. But you can see here you have it on 2 lines, which isn't all that useful. It's kind of hard to read and make sense of. So you can go even a step further and then put that in square brackets, which will make an array in JSON, and then pipe that to the join command. That's a JQ operator to take stuff and combine it by strings. Do it with a comma, and you have, as you can see, 1 line per event here. And you can actually go and sort that. Just put it straight into a CSV file. And then when you open that up, you have it sorted by, your alert signatures, and you can do, say, charts, or maybe combine all the fields like you would in a typical Excel thing, make a report, see what signatures are hitting the most on a particular part of your network, or what Suricata is looking at, and go from there. This is actually mixing data types. So that join operator kind of automatically does this. But for this example, we have, say, our file store. If you have Suricata extracting any of the files from your traffic, it will create its own little JSON. I just dump all of that into one big file. And then you can actually grab, say, the source IP and dest IP. And then the ports are actually numbers. So you have to say, hey, I want this to be a string explicitly. Start adding those together. And then you could make this same output with JQ alone, but I'll have an example coming up of how you can make more use of this by piping it into, other tools. And then this just right here is basically, here's, your source, your dest, source dest. One thing, though, you'll notice is, say, from that drops example earlier, you had different reasons for the drops. So if you had a rule, you might have the signature in that event that says, oh, this is dropped because of this rule, and it has this alert signature. But the other things that weren't signatures or weren't rules won't have a signature. So you'll have these null values in here, which are kind of annoying. Since you probably want to get rid of those, you can simply enough pipe to a select again and just say, hey, I want that field with a dot there, just that field. I don't want it to be null. And that way you can end up getting everything that had an alert signature. So this is kind of the same as if you were to also do a drop reason is rules. It's just a different way of getting the same data. And another step further on that, you could say, okay, I want the alert signature if it's there. And then if there's not an alert signature, if there's a metadata flow bits, then give me that array. And then if there's nothing else, it should at least have a protocol. So give me the protocol. And you can see here, it's the same data, but those nulls are replaced with protocols and other fields that you can specify, which is really nice for gathering data and making choices again. So all that said, you can actually split up these event types into different files. So by default, you have your output section in your Suricata YAML, and you have your Eve extensible event format with just one file, eve.json. And then under that, you would find types, so alert, stats, TLS, what have you. But you could split it and say, have an Eve log of a stats.json and just put the type stats there, and then go another block and say alerts. I just want the types of alerts there, and so on. So you could technically split every event type into its own file. Why would you want to do that? Well, just for JQ's sake, since that's what we're talking about, you try to grab, say, an alert with a timestamp above a certain date. Just doing that on the full eve.json, you're going through the flow, you're going through the DNS, a whole bunch of things that aren't going to be an alert type. So our example I've been using for these slides is about 10 seconds, just to go through the whole thing and select that. But if you did it on just the alerts JSON and not the entire, flow and everything else, only takes maybe 2 seconds. So for JQ alone, that can be, a big benefit if you're doing this a lot or you're making a lot of reports or anything like that. And then, of course, there's other backend tools that people use depending on what environment in. Maybe Splunk or Elastic, right? You want to separate things out, or say you have different systems that you're supposed to put alerts into here and not here, and TLS here but not there. Different people do this differently. It really depends on your setup. Most people, especially if you're a home user, I'd imagine just having everything in one file is good enough. But I figured should mention it, bring that up. A couple extras. So another interesting field you can get is the DNS reverse name here. You sort that out, reverse that, and you have your highest, DNS lookups here. Well, that might be interesting if, say, okay, Bing, that makes sense. People usually go to search for stuff. Gmail, people use email. But then you find some domain in here, like maybe this .cn. Is that China? Are people going there? Should they be going there? Or where you'll see these high counts and you may not recognize domains. Maybe somebody's tunneling out or something like that through DNS, which would be interesting to look at. Another interesting event type we haven't talked about is the anomalies. So this is actually anything, as you can see from the docs, that doesn't match up what we expect in Suricata. So maybe they have, lengths that are wrong, or they're not following RFC, or you have, say, like HTTP traffic inside of an SMB connection or something weird like that. This could be good for threat hunting, where this, single event type might point out something weird going on the network, or maybe something's broken. You never know, but it's interesting nonetheless. From earlier, this is something I use personally. So we go over a lot of, different data and errors and bugs and things like that. So we typically want the smallest Pcaps so a human can look at it and go, okay, yeah, this makes sense or it doesn't make sense. I found a lot of tools don't multi-thread well with Pcaps, and a lot of them don't split the way I just would want to split. So you have the special bash operator here for jobs that just has info on your current running job. JQ command from earlier, where you're getting the source IP and port and all that from your combined file store data. And you're looping through that. So you have a while end jobs here at P, which is basically just saying how many processes you have forked inside your current job. So maybe you have 32 cores. Okay, I want to use maybe 30 of them. Just wait if there's more than 30 jobs running. And then you feed in that JSON line from JQ. You can maybe dump some info out like we did earlier. And then you can also run, say, TCP dump or tshark on it to have some huge Pcap. Just give me the host, port from that file store specific data and write that out. And I like to use the source port and then des port, fork that to the background. And that's really nifty. And I'm sure there's tons of uses you could use other than Pcaps, but that's just one that I personally use. With that, we can go over any questions, or if there's time, do some live, basically just run over some of these examples, or if anybody has a specific example they want to try out.
No questions so far. So if you want to demo what you have, that would be cool.
Right.
And then folks might jump in and comment on that.
Yep. So we will try to have this cheat sheet available in Discord, I believe, or somewhere else. Maybe linked in the video on YouTube. So the first example I had, this eve.json's from a particular set of traffic we use, but if you run select, event type here, or select .alert, which will match on event type rather, you can see it dumps through a lot. So I'm just gonna kill that, and let's just do a word count on the line there, just to see how many alert events are in this particular JSON output. It's probably gonna take a minute. Yeah, Discord. Can you put that in chat, Juliana?
Done.
Thanks.
I was getting it. We also plan to have the cheat sheet as part of our documentation.
Mm-hmm. So just from that one JSON, you can see that took a good bit of time. But we have over 155,000 alerts just in one JSON. And that's just the metadata and the alerts that output from, I believe, 100 gigabyte Pcap. Might be a little less. I might be wrong on that. Can do the TLS here as well. So same Eve file here, just grepping on your event type and TLS v1. So that ends up being a good bit of data here. If I add the -C, we can do a word count on the line again. Probably take a good bit of time again, just because, like I said, it's going through that whole thing. Yeah, I don't think I have the separate ones actually. So that's almost 20,000. Does anybody have, I don't know, any interesting examples maybe they want to go over, or questions? If so, I guess just put it in the chat. Let's see. Another interesting one. So this might be interesting. So the contains HTTP. So that will go over the entire string, like I said. So what we can do is, just for experimenting here, run it through, say, the time command. And I'll do a word count, just because there's no way we can read it as it's whizzing by here, just to see how many signatures contain HTTP, right? Oh, well, we already have quotes in here. This is another thing you'll notice with JQ is quoting can get a little weird. So say, right here, I want to use another command with JQ. The single quotes in bash will, cancel out, say any variables. So if you want to do something fancy like type or something like that, right? If you have it in a single quote, it doesn't expand in bash. But if you have it in double quotes, it will. So that's one trip up I've hit before. Looks like it doesn't like the double quoting here. That's why. Compile error. It's probably the escape quotes there. It doesn't like invalid character Unix shell quoting issue. So that's something you can come across with JQ, just because of the bash in itself. Yeah, just dumping this output will take a certain amount of time, and then I'm curious to see if you use a starts with instead of a contains, how big of a difference. 11 seconds there. Last event type. Yeah,
starts, right? Sorry.
Yeah. So usually, if you wanted to say get the last event type, what I usually do, I'm sure there's tons of JQ ways to modify the data. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't go over you can do. But what I would typically do is say select. I got rid of the question. It was status.
Stats. Yeah.
So I would do something like this, and then probably just tail N1, and that'll go through. It'll select everything, which it's parsing through. It's not all that useful. Get to the end and pipe it to tail. So I'm not sure now that I'm not sure I actually have stats in this output.
Ta-da!
But yeah, if you want to do it with, say, alerts instead, it should end up outputting just the last one. Just did take 11 seconds over here. I'm going to, since it'll take a minute to run. Let's just do I don't know, ends with. Oops. Ends with. Maybe you can't do. Have that right? Oh, I do not have that right. Typo. There you go. Help if I piped it with the single column there. So yeah, ends with, looks like it took maybe a second less. So that's interesting. Was there something? Oh, I thought I saw something else there. So yeah, you can see there with the tail just tailing out the last one. You do have to use the -c to get the whole one line of the event, but it'll get that. There's, like I said, there's different ways in JQ to modify all the data. You can do some pretty advanced stuff like mapping, so you can take other fields, say flow ID, and maybe event type, and then map that to say, instead of flow ID, I want to call it, I don't know, ID number or something like that. That's kind of beyond the scope of this, but it is, there's way more you can do for sure. Let's see.
So,
yeah.
I was just going to mention that the drop reason can be useful. For instance, now with 7, we have the exception policies set to fail close by default. And this means if you have, for instance, a midstream pickup and midstream is not enabled, that will mean that you have lots of drops and you can see traffic blocked. And then you could use that to check if the reason is midstream, string midstream, and then you would probably figure out that there's something going on with the exception policies for midstream.
So yeah, another interesting the counting we were doing. It's both of them. So yeah, the SMB status here, you can do a count on anything that was access denied, like we were doing. Which I must have typed in wrong. Select event. I missed the parenthesis. No.
It's always good to see demos. They always go smoothly.
Right? So let's just do it on the fly then.
Could it
JQ.
maybe be the type of quotes? No.
No, it doesn't look like it. I think it is because it's not in double there. As access denied.
Missing a parenthesis now?
The last one, I think. Yeah. There you go. Thanks. So yeah, that's going through all of those. But what we can do is similar to the counting we were doing. Let's try to grab out just the SMB status and count by how many of those of each. So what you'd want to do is select event type here, pipe that, and just say I want the SMB status, and you can see all of those. Sort on dictionary since it's a string. Give that a second. It's got to go through JQ and sort now. Ends up with looks like a good bit of nulls here, but you can see status success, and then say do a unique count on those. And this should give us every SMB status that was in this output here. So you can see there's a good bit of nulls. Not every SMB event probably has a status, status of 5, which is interesting. Then all of your expected status here, some of them, many of them success. And let's see. I don't know if there's any other particular examples anyone of you wants to go over. What's interesting in here? Actually, where is the drop? Oops. So we have our drop JSON from our IPS example. Another interesting thing, actually, now that I'm thinking about this, say you don't really know what you're looking for at first. You can say JQ, just give it a dot. Depending on the file type, it might be an array. So you might want to do something like dot array. Dot, I think, works for these, though. Do the JSON that you're going over, and then just pipe that to a less. And then instead of that big wall of text flying by, you can, go through it at your leisure in the default pretty format, and you can actually read, say, oh, okay, yeah, you have a timestamp, you have a flow ID, and say you want the drop, the reason, like Juliana was talking about, you don't know where that is. You can do this, and then you can tunnel through and go, okay, well, it's dot drop dot reason, or dot alert, in this case, dot signature ID. And you could get, say, all of the JQ dot alert dot signature ID from drops. Not all of those are there. And then again, like we did do a sort and unique on that. And you'll get all the SIDs that hit in your particular capture here. So most of these ended up from this SID. And if you're going over your network traffic, you might see maybe anomalous data, or in some cases, maybe you have an entire network that is like backup data I've seen, and that's not particularly useful, but it hits on a lot of things. So if you were going through alerts instead of drops, and you saw, oh, all of the alerts are hitting on this SID over here, maybe those particular portions of the network, you can disable those IDs just because it's going to cause a lot of noise. And yeah, I know this is happening, and you just want to ignore that particular event in a particular situation.
Or you could apply a threshold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just say less alerts for those.
Right. I would like to go over this one, but I don't think that we'll
We have
finish
20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We have 20 minutes. Isn't that enough?
No, the PCAP one, that can take hours.
Okay. All right, then. Well, it shows why it's useful then.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. We can go. Oh, yep.
No, go.
I was just gonna say we could go over the eve.json, because I know that was the Suricata eve.json YAML, just because I know that wasn't entirely readable in the slides. So it's at the beginning here, so you just go down a little bit and you have your outputs, and the actual default, as you can see, there's the fast log, which is similar to snort, and then you have your eve, which by default is enabled. It's regular, which is a JSON file now. A bunch of default and disable fields. And you keep going down, and then you hit the types here. And this is where you actually get the event type from. So think is ABC order. So alerts, anomaly. Maybe not.
It's
HTTP.
not.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Sorry.
But yeah, that is what the default one would look like. And then if you did want to split that up, I believe this one has more examples. Go back down to output here. You have Eve stats, which is nice to have on its own, I think. You have your alerts, so you can have that in its separate file and so on, kind of like I showed, just a little more easy to see like this. Any more questions so far?
No, right now. I will share in the chat. Can I share with everyone? Not sure. There is a Suricata Verify test demonstrating how to have different Eve logs. So if anyone wants to see that in detail, it has the important portion of the YAML file, then the outputs. So it showcases this. I was thinking with the JQ filtering, that could be useful for generating data sets, right? Because you can see what is being created more and what would make sense or not. I'm just trying to connect the dots here. One of the examples you gave.
Let's see. Trying to think of anything else we could go over. So a lot of this, like as you can see, is text in, text out, right? It's just a matter of getting the syntax right. And then if you do anything fancy, like you say, I don't know, export something equals alert dot. I'll just do signature ID again. Right? So if you want to do a bash variable inside of something, you got to use the double quotes. Alert and so something here. Contains HTTP, for example. So you can see this is more of a bashism than a JQ thing. But you can see it isn't happy with just the dollar. Oops. Did it again. Isn't happy with just the dollar sign. It knows you're trying to use something in the shell. And then there, where you put it in quotes, since you have a quote, double quote on this side, double quote on this side, and double quotes in the middle, it's not happy. So you can put single quotes in the middle, but still doesn't work. I think that's because I have the wrong number of parentheses.
We have a question. Using this with Grafana or porting to Grafana?
What?
That's it.
Oh, I haven't actually used Grafana too much personally, so I'm not entirely sure. I don't know what the ingest is on that. I know I've used it with Elastic, which has its own tool to take in just straight JSON formats. I don't think JQ's involved in that at all, so I'm not sure if Grafana is the same way. If it has its own tool to take in data. I'd imagine it does, and JQ's not really in the mix there. Trying to see how. I think I typed that wrong. Guess what I could do is, yeah, just pipe it instead of trying to select Eve and then pipe to another JQ. Keep it simple. So the something there should be our previous just alert signature. There we go. And you can see it dumps out as if you put that variable in there. And then if you put it in single quotes, it should complain again, you know, hey, you're trying to quote something, but it's not expanding in bash, so it's not actually working the way you'd expect it to. Trying to make a failure case on the fly, but there it is.
So just to be sure, what's the way that works?
So if you're trying to use a variable, you're going to have to double quote it. But if you end up, say, you want to quote it and then quote it again, so maybe, let's see, I'll just grab one of these and say ID equals that ID. So if I wanted to say that equals this ID, so something right now equals alert signature, and the ID equals this 22 yada yada 21. That will work. But if you, wanted to put, like, say, quotes around it, you might have to do something like that if you had any special characters or anything like that going on. Like, some of these strings have dashes and stuff in them, right? It's just something to note while if you're trying to use anything a little fancier. Don't know. I think that's about it. If there's no more questions, I can't think of any more examples off the top of my head, really.
Would have been cool to see something related to stats, because they end up being fairly useful when you have to troubleshoot what's going on with weird behavior by the engine, and being able to parse that to see, say, if there's any midstream pickups, for instance, or what's the drop reason counters or whatnot. But well, folks have the examples now, then, and they can do that as homework, just if they have to be learned.
Yeah, that's ironically is probably the one I use the most too.
In that case, then cool. Folks, any last words, last questions? Any plugs? Sri Vandenberg is thanking you. Thank you as well for being here with us today. It's been very fun. I remember when I was, Timothy Hellman is also thanking us and saying it was fun and helpful. I agree. When I was an intern, I remember, I think it was when I was an intern or shortly after I joined, I remember having a session with Victor and him doing some JQ trickery and magic, and I copied that and saved it so I could figure it out later because it was so wow. I had never used nor seen JQ before, so and this can be even more powerful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You can like delete fields, you can rename fields, you can completely manipulate the data, but that gets pretty into the weeds.
Cool. And now it will be available on our YouTube soon, so people can explore it even more. Folks, thanks a lot for your audience today. Thanks, Corey, for your time preparing and presenting this. I really liked it. And
Thanks.
if there's nothing else, successful webinar achieved. Hopefully see you next month.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye, folks. Thank you.